Hello, my name's Tony George, Wheeling Woodworker. What I'm going to do today is demonstrate the Jamieson boring bar system. I like the boring bar system because of the ease of use and the ease of measurement with the laser light. Most boring bars are, of course, scrapers. Simple scraper that you can use inside a bowl or something. This is a handheld boring bar system. There's another one with a hook tool to get around inside of the bowl or inside the vessel. These are very good, and I have used these, and I do know how to use them. The reason I like the Jamieson system is ease of measurement, and it's less stress for me to try and lean over in the wheelchair. So, what I'm going to do in this demonstration is a series of steps to set up. I won't finish the piece, but I will get it very close. And I've got several pieces that I'm going to be putting in the lathe so that you see the process. This is more about the process than a finished product. The finished product is your design, not mine. So one of the first things I do is I have a board with a center line on it, and this I scratch on my tailstock. Reason being is so that I can line up the center mark of my boring bar system. So this I use as a gauge. This is just a simple jig made out of a piece of plywood. The next thing I do, of course, is take a bowl gouge, have a block, raw stock, and I'm sure that if you've got to this stage of making vessels, you know how to rough form your raw stock into a vessel form. So I have a small piece. What I'm going to do is I'm going to face this off. I'm going to put a dimple in it with a parting tool. I have a drill on a handle that I can drill the center out so that I have a starting point for the cutter of the boring bar system. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how I set up the boring bar system. I'm going to start with this piece and I'll go to some of my demonstration pieces that I have on the table so that you can see the progression, and then I'll explain that, and then I'm going to actually do some work on the lathe. So if you give me a minute, let me get in position so that I can face this off and put a dimple in it so that I can drill it out. One of the reasons I like putting a dimple in the bottom of my piece is so that it's centered. If you go to the drill press and you think you're going to drill it and it's going to be on the axis, it probably won't be, so it's easier to take and drill it. Use the parting tool to put a small dimple so that your drill has a place to register. The drill sometimes doesn't stay right on the center point, but it's close enough so that you can get a start with your cutting tip from the boring bar system. Turn my speed down. I'm going to drill. I'm going to use the tool rest to set my drill bit. When I kind of get a visual idea of where I want my drill to be, and as I go, I'm going to use my thumb or a piece of tape. If you want to use a piece of masking tape on here, you can do that also. It's a nice way to drill a depth hole with a regular drill. Put a piece of tape on your drill bit and drill your hole. This I'm going to do freehand. So I'm going to turn my speed down, and then I'm going to drill at a slow speed. Your shavings, they'll get bound up to the point that it can break your tip, especially if they're small drill bits. So you have to clean your drill bit. What I'm doing is I'm checking the depth. Put my thumb on here, pull it out, lay it over the top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark with a pencil so that I know what the depth of my hole is. So my tool rest to the side. A simple mark. You can go all the way around, but that's big enough to see. Turn it on, mark it. I know where the depth of my hole is. So now that I have the depth of my hole, I know where the bottom of my vessel is. So what I'm going to do now, this I'm going to put on the side, and I'm going to set up my boring bar of the boring bar system. You need a back bar support. This is a secondary tool rest. It's in a captured system between the two bars. This way here, if you do get a catch, the top bar keeps it from flipping out, breaking or busting something or hurting you. Nobody wants to get hurt. This has a very simple attachment. It's got what you could call a butterfly. This sets between the bedways, and it's got a bolt, tightens it up, and locks it in. And you can pivot this. It's not fixed. Taking off my standard tool rest. And yes, I can use this on this boring bar system. Lyle Jamieson has designed the tool rest with a nut on it. And what this does, it gives you very detailed adjustment. So you can adjust the height of the front tool rest. So I do use that. The boring bar system consists of the primary body of the D-ring. It's got a set screw, has the boring bar itself with a pivot head cutter. It's adjustable. Has a tube stock, an adjustment with a laser pointer. And the laser pointer is adjustable through the swivel. This here unlocks, it can go up and down and all over the place. And that I will adjust as time goes on. What it does also have is it has a safety hole for a small cotter pin so that it doesn't fall out. You don't want to go too far and have it fall out and then have that thing spinning at 1200 RPM. Oh no, what do I do? Capture system is very easy. Sets them there. Sets on the tool rest. Take the cotter pin, set it in your hole, and you basically, this is set up to go. When I took and I set up this board off the tool, off the tailstock, the center line is here. I do it on both sides. When I'm all the way back, I want my cutter to be on that center axis. When I'm all the way forward, I also want it on that center axis so that I don't have to adjust it. So once I have my secondary tool support adjusted, and I can take this, you can see it's a little bit off, loosen my banjo, loosen my tool rest. Get this relatively close, back this up, I can get it right on here. I have that on the center axis line. So for whatever the travel distance of the back of the secondary tool rest is to the front, I'm on the center axis. Because a scraper works in a drag, it's an acute angle, 90 degrees, we want it to be less than 90. On the inside, 9 o'clock and above. On the outside, 9 o'clock and below. So that it's always in a drag position. So I'm going to do something to kind of show you what I mean. in regards to the scraper, I'm going to put this piece back in. Scraper, used properly, on the outside below 9, on the inside above 9. It's a acute angle. So I can take this all day long. I'm not going to get a catch. If I was to go up above it, I can get a nasty catch. Tear the wood out of the chuck, take the tool, flip it out of your hands if you don't have it, might catch you right in the chin. So I have to have a negative break on this. When I set my boring bar system into the D-ring holder, this could pivot inside the collar. There's a set screw here. What you want to do is tighten your set screw being harder steel than the boring bar itself. There's a dimple. Take it out, you grind it, you file a little flat. This way here it can't rotate. Do the same thing with the cover. A little bit negative of an angle. And what you do there is you take and you put a square across here, so it's 88, 89 degrees instead of 90. Then the center axis, so I'm up in here in the hole, and I can actually turn this from here. Now I'll leave this piece in here and I'll show you how I cut with it. I'm going to bring my tool rest up a little bit closer, of course. Still on the axis, but I can take it, bring this down just a whisker. This works. Fingertips. Bang the hell out. Now I can take it, get in the hole. Pick up my RPMs. 850. Takes a little bit, kind of boring, no pun intended. If you need to look at this, this is Jamieson, so he has a very good video on this. Some of the lines I'll use are probably his, no pun intended. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to show you a series of pieces that I've worked on, and you can see what I've done here. We've got a piece to form, no center. I showed you how to cut the dimple. I showed you how to drill the hole. Drill the hole down to the depth, which I've marked. Same thing as here. My third example is basically what I'm doing is I'm rough boring it down almost to the finished mark. Not totally. We're going to get to that. The fourth step, of course, is to set up the distance from the cutting tip to the laser light to get your wall thickness. Then I will do all of this as I cut for the process of hollowing out the piece. Now this is quite big. You can get a smaller opening if you want to get a really, really tiny opening like David Ellsworth would do. I would suggest going to hand boring tools. If you want to make a burial urn or something like that, and you want to do a threaded insert, you can take and do that so that you can make a secondary threaded insert for a finial cap that you could thread into this for a burial urn for a friend, for a pet, something to that effect. A lot of people do them with the hand tools, and I have done them with hand tools. But when I'm making a utilitarian piece, something that's just nice for a gift, put a glass in there with some water, with some flowers, it makes a nice urn for the counter. Something to that effect. So, once I've gotten to this stage, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how the laser works, how to set it up, how to index it off an index card, and then I'm going to proceed probably with this piece here, how to cut the depth in regards to the wall thickness. Cut the depth on this with a boring system. I think we can do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take more out of this, and I'm just going to show how to get the depth here. I'm probably going to take the boring bar system out. I'm going to cut a little bit of a profile in my block with my bowl gouge. Simple profile, make a simple ashtray, a simple candy dish, whatever it might be. And then I'm going to get in and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to take this off, and then I'm going to do a little turning, and then I'm going to set it back up, because all you got to do is take it off. I can leave this here. The secondary tool rest can stay. Now what I'm going to do, since I got a simple form, pretty simple shape, of course I got to remark my bottom so I won't oops. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to that depth, and then I'm going to take and clean the sidewalls. So I have to set up my boring bar system and my cutter tip to go straight in. There's a little bit off to the side. It's like a 40-45 degree angle here right now. I'm going to bring it around square so that I can do a cut across the bottom and the side so I can get to my final depth. Some people question that. I kind of like knowing where my depth is. When I do my bowls, I'll do the sidewalls. I'll find my final depth, and then I blend the sidewall to the bottom. Being the bottom, being the side, and now coming in together. So I kind of like to have an idea of where I am. set up the boring bar right on the tip, so that I can see where the depth of my tip is. This is very shallow, I can look down inside of this. But if it was 10, 12 inches deep, I can't look down in there. So I need to know where the cutting tip is. So I loosen my block, bring it up here. Now these executive laser pointers, they have a button, but they don't have an on-off switch. So you use an O-ring. Go to your auto supply store, get an O-ring that fits on there, and that locks the laser on, so you can see where the laser is. Now, I come down here, and I see where my laser is, loosen my block, come over, and wiggle it so it kind of just touches the tip. So I know where, and I don't know if you're picking this up. Can you see this, Joe? Needless to say, this is the very tip of the laser in the cutter. So now I know that I can look up on top of my piece, and I know where I'm at in regards to the depth of the cut. So without even looking at it, and I'm not going to look down here, I'm going to get back out of the way where I can't see the inside of the vessel. But I can see the laser. So I can back this up. Misjudged. How do I know that? Because I feel that the laser dot, the cutter tip, according to the laser, is down below my mark. That's good to know, because in this way here, I know that I still have enough material inside the chuck. When I reverse chuck this, to cut that. Leave enough of the shoulder. So I know that I need to take and restrike my mark here. And I know that it's in the hollow where my transition is. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to mark it with a pencil, erase this one, and then this way I know where I am. I have my new mark. This mark's going to go away. And I will use my scraper to get rid of it. Now I know where I am. I usually do not do that without the tool rest. But to show you that a scraper is a very safe tool if used properly. Now what I'll do is I'll go to my final depth. Now, I need to take and start measuring my sidewall thickness. And I don't have a piece of paper. I'm going to use a piece of sandpaper. I'm just going to make a mark. I'm going to say 1/4, 3/16 of an inch mark. I have a mark. I want to make sure that I'm on a certain axis. So I want to make sure that I'm perpendicular. I don't want to have any out of angle. When you think about measuring with a pair of calipers, if you go into something, you want to make sure that you're perpendicular. If you go at an angle, so if I was to measure this, I could go in square. But what happens if I twisted it or I turned it? Then I'm not getting an accurate reading. So what I need to do is have the laser light. I need my laser light to be over to the side. I also need to move my tool tip around because I'm not cutting straight in anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust it so that I can come to this mark this way, so that when I go into here, I'm cutting perpendicular this way. Very simple method. 45 degrees, about 90 degrees. A little bit more if I wanted to, because I'm going to come back in here. Wherever my laser is. In fact, I do it with my hand until I get relatively close. And then I'll come up in here with my paper. Piece of cardboard's better. Index card's nice because it's firm. I have this, and I can move my cutter to that mark. Pick that up, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have it at that mark. That's my wall thickness. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside and I'm going to cut to the side. I've already got this relatively thin or thick. I've got it rough cut to the depth. I've got it bored in, so I'm not going to worry about hitting my boring bar. So now I can take and come in here and I can cut this out. I should take a little more out of the bottom. We can work on that as we go. You see where it's a dot? You see where it's a dot on top of the piece? And as I come across here, it's going to get elongated. Eventually, it's going to come off of the piece. So it's a very long, gated, light, and then you get to the point where it comes off. And you just want to come off it just a whisker. If you can just see it along the edge of the surface, then you use fingertip control to blend all them ridges, high and low spots. Some people would say use a teardrop scraper. I feel that you can do a transition with this. When I get close to doing that, what I will do is I will lubricate my boring bar system, take a piece of paraffin, an old wax candle, no beeswax. Beeswax is sticky, it's meant to penetrate. Paraffin is a slick. I'll rub that on the boring bar, the secondary tool rest, the primary tool rest, and then I have very easy control, very light touch work. And this is the premise of why I like this machine, this system. I've got to get a little more out of the inside before I start doing some accurate measuring. So I'm going to take and readjust my cutter just briefly. I'm just eyeballing here. You can see that I'm still quite a ways away from my cutter. And then what I'll do is I'll go back to my card and I'll measure where I'm at. And you can see that I'm relatively close, but I want to make sure that I use this as my finished cut. I got this at a 45, 50 degree angle. Doesn't have to be critical. I can swing my back end around. Cutter loosened up. Then make sure that stays relatively tight. Slipping and sliding all over the place. Okay, let's see what we can do again. Fit. One of the things you'll notice as I'm cutting, I'm looking at the laser light, and it basically gives me a profile of the inconsistency of the inside. And what that means is where there's any undulations, any high or low spots, the laser light tells you where it is. It's following the cutter tip. So I'm not looking for exact wall thickness at this stage. I'm just trying to get rid of some of the bulk out of the middle of this piece. Then what I'll do is I will resharpen my cutter tip. I will set it up with my card to the thickness that I want, the 3/16, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, whatever. And then I'm going to take and do some very light detail cutting so that I can keep that thin wall profile. Right now I'm just removing stock, so if it looks like I'm bulldozing my way through it and jamming through it. That's just the way things, it's not a finesse cut. It doesn't need to be because we're just removing waste. We're getting the insides out of it. I have a feeling that I'm running into the bottom, which I am, so I can take and turn my cutter head, my cutter tip, swing around a little bit more. Take a little more out of the bottom. I could feel down in there with my fingers. If I couldn't, I could take and look down in there with a small flashlight. But I'm feeling in there, and yeah, there's a few ridges, a few bumps, but I've got enough of the inside out where I can take my cutter tip off, resharpen it, reset my laser light, and then go for my finished profile. I'm going to shut my light off. Just take the O-ring down off the button. I'm going to take my cutter tip out. Small 3/8 or 3/16 cutter, and it's carbide steel. It's an industrial tool steel. I have a Wolverine sharpening jig, so I do use that wide platform to grind. Because of my disability, the same way I sharpen my bowl gouge. I sharpen one side, then I turn it around and I use the other hand, I sharpen the other side. When I use a bowl gouge, when I sharpen my bowl gouge, I usually come in 92 degrees, swing, 92 degrees, swing, so that I get my wings cut back. That's for another video. Got a fresh burr on my cutter. I'm going to bring it around, well, maybe not quite 90. A better wrench. I'm going to put my laser light back on, then I'm going to get my card and I'm going to set up for final cut wall thickness. Let's put our light back on. Let's find out where we're at. Right there, I'm on the cutter. So I come back over here. Pretty close. Not bad. You can do whatever you want with it. Make sure that's good and tight. Got our tool rest. A lot of times I'll use a spring clamp because as you pull this into this, a lot of times that'll come out and it'll change your angle. So whether you want it way over here or way over here, it depends on where you set your laser up. Because if I set this up like this, and I went to my laser's over here, but my cutter might be coming in this direction instead of this direction. So you want to make sure that you set your cutter up according to where your tool rest is. It's not super critical, but it's nice to have a generalization of where your secondary tool rest is, where your cutter is in regards to the laser light. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut this and work my way down in steps and stages so that I can take and come around the rounded transition. If it was a bowl, we'd go inside of it with a scraper or a bowl gouge. This is a hollow vessel, end grain turning. This is somewhat faulted, it's a little bit tear up, but nothing 80 grit wouldn't take care of. That 80 grit gouge sometimes is one of the best tools. If you look over here, you can see how the light comes to the edge. What'll happen is the light will get long, and then what it'll do, it'll get egg-shaped, and then it'll basically disappear. I'm done. I stop. Otherwise, I can go through my sidewall, go back, make another cut, go back, make another cut. If you look over here, you can see where I'm cutting, even though I can't look at it. Stop. If I get close to the edge, what I do is I go back in to take all those transition marks. Now I've got this a little bit thinner than I think I wanted to go, but the beauty of the boring brush system is you can get relatively thin and still keep the inside quite clean. This is where an air compressor, a straw, a piece of plastic pipe that you can put in there, blow in, kind of a cheap air compressor. I'm getting close to the bottom, so I'm actually running the bottom cutter into the bottom. So I need to take and readjust my cutter head. But basically, the thing is, I'm getting relatively thin in the sidewalls. It's a relatively simple process. I'm going to readjust my cutter tip. It's a little bit more than 45, but 45 will get both the bottom and the side. So now I've got to see where my laser light is. And you can see that I'm way out of the way, way over here. So I have to readjust this to come out. Let's get our collar. You can see it from the side, a little bit thick. So I can smooth this in just a little bit. Tighten it up. A little bit off, but I'm close enough. I could always set this back up and go back in and make one more final cut. When you get the top thin, you're in quite a ways. It's kind of hard to do that. But for a demonstration purpose, I think that you get the premise of what I'm trying to convey. So now I'm going to go down in that transitional area between the bottom and the side. And I still have my laser light. So I can go in there and I can actually feel the bumps and undulations of what I have inside this small vessel. What I'm doing now, and I don't know if you can pick it up, I'm right on the bottom line of the vessel. So what I'm doing is I'm coming across the bottom, and then as the line, the dock gets longer, I'm going to transition up into the side. This is one of the nice things. This is probably one of the toughest parts of bowl turning or vessel turning, is a transition between the base, the bottom, and the sidewall. So I can follow this right across my line that I've marked, that's going to get sanded off afterwards when I reverse turn this. And I can come out to the sidewall so that I can make that transition, a nice transition from here to the sidewall. So let me continue. feel in there because it's shallow. Maybe a little bit of a ridge in there, but it's not bad. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this up against the sidewalk because I got a little bit thin. But what I'm going to do is bring my light back to the side of the vessel. Just see just a little bit here. And if you take a look, you can see that I'm right on the edge. So now, if I drag my tip up in here, you can see how much I have left to cut back in here. It's long, but it's not on the edge like this is. So now I can come up in here, I can clean that shoulder out of there to the edge, and I have a very thin piece. That's basically the finished piece. Now I would go through the process of sanding the outside first, then I would do the inside. I would get all of the still a little bit thick in the bottom, but I don't want to go any thinner than that. There's some transitional marks that I can feel down in there. I'm going to clean up a little bit. Basically the end of the video. Now, what I would do, I would take this out, turn my light off, save my battery. I would take this, I would make a jam chuck, I would clean this up, I would put a concave down to the mark, sand it, and have a finished, basically a finished piece. My bottom's a little bit high in the center, but that's nothing that if I wanted to, I could probably put this back in and clean up the bottom of it. But for the video purposes, this is basically a very simple vessel. The more you do, the better you get with it. It's just like driving. You remember when you first learned how to ride a bike and you fell over? Well, you got back up. Now you go with no hands. It's pretty simple. After a while, the simplicity of what this does for you and the ease of how it makes it so that if you've got bad shoulders, if you've got a bad back, if you're disabled like I am, this makes it very simple because of being able to get in there and seeing where your laser light is. You can tell where you're at. So if you want to come after, you put a bag on it, go have some lunch, come back, you're still there. You can still go and you can have a relatively thin piece. Well, that's it. That's the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. This video, there's several things that I do for video purpose. One, of course, is no face shield. I should be using a face shield, and I recommend it. The other thing is, while I'm working a piece, I use this as a brake. That's a no-no. I've been doing it for many years. I've been wood turning since I was a teenager. The past 12 years, when I've started returning after I had my accident, this becomes second nature to me, and I know that it's not good practice. Same as turning without a face shield. It's not good practice, and I do not recommend these things. If you have any questions, look up my contact information. I'd be happy to talk with you.